I'm James Hahn II,
And I'm Mark LaCour.
and you're listening to the Oil and Gas This Week podcast brought to you by Red Wing. This is the show for busy oil pros who want to quickly keep their finger on the pulse of the industry. Episode 56. Welcome in, Mr. Mark LaCour.
As always, great to be here, James.
It is great to be here. We haven't mentioned in a few episodes, I'm from triberocket.com. Tribe being the tribe of people that you build around your brand to drive traffic, leads, and sales into your business. And what about you, Mark?
Modalpoint.com. We are the sales experts in the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, so if you have anything you want to sell into oil and gas, then you talk to Mark. And if you need the messaging and the story, then you talk to me. But one unfortunate thing we have to talk about this morning is it's been a rough week with the terrorist attacks in Brussels.
Yeah, it's this is just horrible, right? 31 people were killed, 270 were injured from terrorist attack by ISIS.
Yeah.
So our hearts and our prayers go out to our brothers and sisters in Brussels.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, the oil field lost a really great man in Mr. Lou Ward, which I know you know much more about Mr. Ward than I do, so I'll let you talk.
Yeah, Lou was one of the godfathers of the oil and gas industry. He started Ward Petroleum back in 1971. He was a Korean War Army vet. Great guy, built a great company with a great culture, and he just recently passed away. So rest in peace, Lou Ward.
Yeah, and I'm going to get a little emotional here, and it might seem silly because we're going to talk about a rapper, but Phife Dawg from Tribe Called Quest passed away yesterday. A Tribe Called Quest, if you've never heard of them, they were a groundbreaking, influential rap group out of New York City in the 90s. And I'm going to get emotional. Phife hooked me on hip-hop. That's why I became a DJ. That's why I know how to produce podcasts. That's why I have a business. And I can remember the tape that I first heard, A Tribe Called Quest, and even the name of my business is somewhat of a hat tip to these guys. So rest in peace, Phife Dawg. You did a lot for me in my life, and I wouldn't be where I am without you. So for all of these, for Phife and for Lou Ward and the terrorist attacks, we're going to take a brief moment of silence right here at the top of the show. All right. Thank you for going through that with us. Please pray for everyone involved in the terrorist attacks. Pray for Mr. Ward's family, and pray for Phife. And the one thing I want to stress here, because I have personal experience with this, hits me hardly, not only because of the influence on my life, but he died from complications from diabetes that didn't need to happen. And my first business was helping people get off sugar and lose weight. And my dad is a type 2 diabetic, and it took us a long time to finally convince him to kick sugar, and he did, and he lost all the weight, and he got all of his meds. So maybe that's one good thing that can come out of that. Get off the sugar and take care of yourself.
A lot of people don't know this, but type 1 diabetes, you can't control. It's an autoimmune disease where your immune system attacks your own insulin-producing cells. Type 2 diabetes, you control. It's diet and exercise. And if you do the right things, you can get off all the meds and make type 2 diabetes go away.
Yeah, and that's exactly what my dad did. And yesterday I did hit 14 because I've got a little weight carrying from the last couple of years of what I've been through. But I don't know, it hit me hard in that way because I'm 35, he was 45, and I said, okay, fight 14 flights of stairs 4 times. Let's go. So anyway, let's move on. We've got a lot of stories to get to. Major production projects start up around the world. This got a lot of attention from Rig Zone. So talk us through it, Mark.
Yeah, this is a great article in Rig Zone. This is basically showing that even in these low crude prices, major projects are still being started up. And the reason they're being started up is because these offshore projects, especially deep water projects, have a very long lifetime. From first oil to decommission, maybe 50 years. So a 1 to 2 year blip of low crude prices doesn't really affect the profitability, although some of these projects are pushed out. So they're talking about how in Europe there's a bunch of projects being kicked off. There's projects being kicked off in the Middle East, projects being kicked off in Africa, and projects being kicked off in Asia. One that was really cool is in Europe, Total's Lagoon Tomar development, which is west of Shetland area, will go online at 90,000 barrels a day.
Whoa.
That's some big production numbers. And they're also looking to hit about 500 million cubic feet of gas per day. So, once again, we're living in a hydrocarbon abundant world, and we will continue to live in a hydrocarbon abundant world because of big projects like this.
Yeah, and it's really going to benefit the people of the UK because more energy independence for them.
Yeah, yeah. So the more they can produce, the less they have to buy from Russia, the less chokehold Russia has on Europe, which is a good thing.
Absolutely. And what were some of the other projects that they keyed in on?
So I thought it was really cool. They also talking about the Horse Hill discovery, which is a new discovery in the UK, and Schlumberger was out there helping them with that. And they calculate there's about 11 billion barrels of oil in place. That's a big number. And then starting about in Africa, Africa's rocking and rolling. Even Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia had some new projects come online. Where they're looking to produce about another 25, or have the ability to produce another 25 million barrels of oil, which is significant. It's not as huge as 90 million barrels of oil, but still 25 million barrels from from the reservoirs as mature as Saudi Arabia is actually pretty cool. And this is all leading back to new technology. New technology is allowing us to either find oil and gas that we didn't know existed where it was, or actually be able to profitably pull it out of the ground.
What about anybody that might be listening and saying, "Whoa, whoa, 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 Mark, we need these capacities to draw down. We can't have all this stuff going on."
Yeah, it's and I've actually heard quite a bit of that. What people don't realize, the reason we're in a low crude price market right now is that there's an oversupply, right? So there's actually more oil and gas in the market than is being used. But that percent of oversupply is shrinking dramatically. We are getting close where we'll be back to what I would consider normal prices, which is be around $50 to $60 a barrel. We're still saying 60 by August. There's been some recent developments. Libya is not being able to come online like they thought they were. It looks like some of the OPEC countries will actually back off production. Some productions that starting to decline here in the Gulf Coast. So we may even be in a rebound situation. I don't have enough data yet to call that, but it may actually spike at say 75 or 80 for a little while and then drop back down to 50 or 60. Once again, I don't have enough data to confirm that, but we still are sitting hard and fast at $60 a barrel by August.
We'll definitely get into that a little bit later in the show. Let's move over to Algeria, where Reuters had an exclusive: oil revenues down. Algeria woos energy investors.
Yeah, so Algeria is in a predicament right now. They've had some security issues out there, and Algeria is in North Africa. If nobody knows where Algeria is, and they declining their revenues dependent on good oil prices, which we're in low oil prices right now. So they need to actually produce increase output in these low crude prices so they can at least make some money. And they don't have the ability to do that. So what they're doing is they're reaching out to the rest of the world looking for investors, both with capital or technology, to invest in their oil fields so they can increase production, so that they can actually still make some money. But 2013 we had a terrorist attack basically in the BP and Statoil plant, and 40 oil workers died. So the oil and gas industry safety is the biggest business driver globally. So a lot of these companies that normally would invest in Algeria are looking like, there's a security risk out there. We don't want our people to get hurt. So it's gonna be interesting to see what Algerian governments have to do. Is they have to be able to assure investors that they can secure their own borders, and I just don't think they're going to be able to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works out.
So it looks like they're talking to Eni and then Sinopec. Is it Sinopec or Sinopec?
Sinopec.
Okay, so they're talking to Eni and Sinopec. So, and then also mentioning Statoil. And you don't have a crystal ball, but what's the likelihood that these companies are going to want to go ahead?
If they wouldn't have had the security issues, I would say they're going to, if it makes business sense, they'll do it, right? If the finances work out. But James, you know this, and our audience know this. Safety is a global business driver in this industry. Nobody wants their people to get hurt. And when you have an area of the world where terrorists are able just to cross borders and kill people in a plant, I I've actually I talk to a lot of oil and gas business executives on a daily basis, and I don't see this happening just because of the security issues. Because I don't think Algeria can convince anybody they can secure their borders.
Yeah, well, we'll continue to follow that story. And moving over to Oman, I should say, PDO exceeds 2015 oil and gas production target.
Yeah, how cool is that, right? So they had production targets. This is Petroleum Development Oman, which is the NOC, the national oil company there, and they actually passed it up. And the cool thing about this is that if they want to, they think they can hit 600,000 barrels a day, which is way ahead of their target. And once again, they're going to use this, and they're an OPEC member. They're going to use this to try to bring prices back up. So they have the ability to produce 600,000 barrels a day, but they won't produce that until they get the price back up. And this is OPEC strategy, as a whole. And Oman's a good OPEC member. There's also bad OPEC members who don't go along with the strategy of OPEC, and they're paying the price right now. Venezuela is a prime example of their government, I think, is going to get overthrown because of the chaos caused by these low crude prices, which is one of the reasons OPEC originally kept production up to lower the crude price. They wanted to punish their rogue members. So here's a good example of an OPEC country doing the right thing for its people, and at the same time, if they need to ramp up production and the price to go back up, they have the ability to do that.
Yeah, it looks like they're kind of walking the line, to quote
Yeah,
Johnny Cash, in terms of keeping cash flow coming in, but also not maximizing production to push things down to the floor.
yeah, and Oman does some really cool stuff, even though it's a monarchy. So they've created a whole bunch of jobs, and a lot of these jobs around this are actually in small and medium-sized companies. They support small companies within their borders in the oil and gas industry, something a lot of OPEC members don't do. That gives you the ability to have a bunch of different people working on the same problem, which drives efficiencies in the industry. And at the same time, when you support small business, you support your local people, because that's who runs these small businesses. So I'm a big fan of Oman Production Company.
And it looks like they've had some discoveries in the country.
Yeah, they've made some new discoveries, and we just talked about that previously, and that relates back to technology. Basically, seismic technology has improved so much that now you're able to go places in the world where you think there's no oil and gas, and find it and figure out exactly where it is and how big it is. Once again, it's people think about oil reserves like a glass, right? There's only so much in there, and when you pull some out, eventually you go deplete it all. I challenge you to think about oil and gas as the sand on the beach, right? The sand on the beach is used to make glass, but nobody thinks we're going to deplete all the sand on the beach by making glass. It's just there's so much of it there, it doesn't even come in place, and that's what's happening right now globally. Is we're in this hydrocarbon rich environment, and we'll continue to be there for a long time.
Yeah, 7,200 jobs for more than 3 billion. So pretty good for their local economy. All
Yeah,
right,
very good.
moving over to the American side of things, struggling U.S. oil and gas companies eye rare financing deals.
Yeah, so we've talked about this, or we've at least touched this. I'm firmly convinced that a new debt market is going to be created in oil and gas, which is going to drive different business decisions and different adaptations of new technologies, blah blah blah. But this is talking about how some of the big oil and gas industries like Chesapeake is looking to do something different, which is basically called a 1.5 lien. Now, a lien, if you don't understand what that means, is basically when whoever owns your debt can then own your property. So in my case, for my house, if the bank wanted to apply a lien because I wasn't able to pay my mortgage, they would then say, okay, I now own your house, Mark LaCour. You can stay there. I now own your house. And when you pay off this debt that you owe me, I'll give it back to you. It's a legal thing. Well, at 1.5 lien is something different. It's where the bank would say to me, okay, we don't own your house. We own the ground your house is built on. Somebody else owns your house, has another lien. So the first lien and the 1.5 lien together own your business. And that's a second round of debt that can be financed. So in this case, Chesapeake Energy is looking to do this because they're in $9 billion of debt. And you know, $9 billion is a lot, especially when Chesapeake's earnings was only 600 million. So they're looking at basically refinancing their debt in a way that's never been done in oil and gas to try to keep their company propped up so they can eventually pay all this debt off and pay all these bonds off and then reemerge as a smaller, leaner, but still sovereign company, Chesapeake Energy, keep their people employed.
But Moody's here says that it's a pretty rare thing. Only 6 companies in the field have ever done this.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's going to happen. It's very risky. So think about you, right? If somebody came to you and said, "Look, Mark's not paying off his house note, his mortgage. We own his house now. We have a lien against that. But here, why don't you give us your money to own the land his house is on?" You wouldn't go for that. I mean, because it's very risky, right? If I default, the owner of the house can sell the house. You can sell the land, but it's not worth that much, right? So I don't see this going through. Actually, I think what's going to happen is you can see a debt equity market appear in oil and gas where investors are willing to step into, like in this case, Chesapeake, and say, okay, here's the deal. We will pick up your $9 billion of debt so you can stay in business, but you need to pay us back $13 billion over the next 20 years. I think that's what's going to happen. And we've actually, you and I, James, where were we? We were at NAPE and we met a gentleman that's actually doing this.
Yeah, that was at NAPE.
Yeah. So this 1.5 lien thing, I don't really see it taking off.
Yeah, and actually they mention a couple of the other companies who have actually tried to go down this road unsuccessfully and then filed bankruptcy. So it is quite a high risk endeavor if you're headed down this road.
Yeah, I just don't think people will invest money in this. It's just too risky.
All right, speaking of risk, will the fall of Lin Energy from Seeking Alpha, will the fall of Lin Energy save the oil industry?
Yeah, you know how I have this love-hate affair with Seeking Alpha?
I'm very aware.
This is a great article. If you want to understand financially what the future of the oil and gas industry, especially here in North America, is, read this. This is really good. Because they're basically talking about Lin Energy is going to declare bankruptcy, which is true. They will. But the fact of this is going to create a domino effect where a bunch of these over-leveraged, especially the over-leveraged shale players, are just going to go bankrupt. And the reason they go bankrupt, quite frankly, is because people got in the oil and gas industry that don't know oil and gas, and they invested money not understanding how this industry works. And they built financial models that were just prone to failure, especially below $60 a barrel. So what's going to happen is the weaker players are going to be weeded out by natural business selection. They're going to go bankrupt, or people are going to buy them. And when that happens, it's going to clear out the field so that the strong players, the good players, can survive. People like XTO Energy, who's just still rocking and rolling in the shale plays. So it's a good article talking about how bankruptcy, creditors, debt, what's going to happen in the next couple of years in North America.
I like the line, we need a season of cleaning in this environment.
Yeah, and it's not new. I was talking to somebody yesterday about this. This is the 4th time I've been through this, and in more or less various ways, the same things happen. You have companies go out of business. You have companies lay off people. You have companies have too much debt. It gets cleaned up, and then the ones that are lean and mean and know what they're doing survive, and then they go on to prosper in the future. And the thing I don't quite understand is, why does everybody think this is like so new? It's happened in my lifetime. 4 times I've been through this. The same things more or less happen. So it's what happens when you're a commodity market. I mean, it's not just oil and gas that's suffering. All commodities right now are in decline. Copper, sugar, coffee. That's the world we live in. But once again, if you want to kind of understand the financials and how this is going to shake out, this is a great article.
Yeah, and from my free market perspective, this is something that can create a lot of doom and gloom. Oh, there's all these companies are going bankrupt. I lived through it in Michigan when we unfortunately did the bailout. But this really drives home the fact that bankruptcy is a good thing because it frees up assets for people that know what they're doing to come in and maximize them.
Yeah. And you're right. This is a free market byproduct that is actually in a lot of ways good for the market. It's not good for the people that are going to lose their jobs, right? And our hearts go out to them. We try to help them, but it
We have
is
a show to help
eventually,
them.
yeah, it is eventually be good for the market.
Definitely. So this next one is it may be off the radar, but I had to throw it in here because I recently watched a documentary about nuclear, and it was fascinating to me because, of course, Big Oil had to play the bad guy in the documentary, but equally bad guy was, oh goodness, I'm totally losing the name of the Land and Water Watcher, all these different companies or different activist groups, and a lot of people don't realize that nuclear is literally the safest power that you can possibly have. And so here we go. And I didn't discuss with you beforehand, so it'll be interesting to banter here to hear what your thoughts are. But this time it's North Dakota that sinks an experiment related to burying nuclear waste.
Yeah, I was surprised you stuck this in here. I actually, out of high school for one summer, worked in a nuclear plant.
Another thing I didn't know.
Yeah. And so this is, you know what this is a good article on? This is a good article showing how public perception will influence politics that does not match up with the science. So nuclear power is the safest power on the planet. And you can argue with me all you want, the data's there. But what happens is people don't like the idea of having a nuclear power plant. And there's a bunch of misconceptions. And here's a perfect example of, one of the things about nuclear power is you need to dispose of, especially fuel rods, spent fuel rods. And so one of the safest way to do that is deep vaulting, where basically you get into the bedrock in the planet and you stick the nuclear rods in there. And so here's an article where in North Dakota, the public had so much opposition that they had a project to do this, and the project was killed because of the public opposition. What the public doesn't know is that the spent fuel rods that you're sticking in the bedrock is less radioactive than the bedrock itself. Our planet is extremely radioactive, especially if you drill deep. It's one of the things that the oil and gas industry has to deal with. How do you get rid of those radioactive particles in the fracking fluids because you're drilling? So this is just a perfect article on how perception doesn't match science, which then drives policy, which then calls us to do silly stuff.
Yeah, one of the statistics, I can't remember exactly, but it was something along the lines of if you go jump on a plane and fly from here to there, you're going to be literally take on, I'm saying literally too much, but you're going to take on as 10 times, or not 10 times, but some whatever X amount of radiation than you would from working in a nuclear plant for one day.
Oh, I'll give you a perfect example, right? So when I did that at high school, I worked and cleaned up what's called low-level radioactive waste, which was less than 7 disintegrations per minute, DPM, which is how you measure radioactivity. And people go, "Oh my God, aren't you scared? You're working with radioactive waste." Let me put 7 DPM in perspective. A banana is 20 DPM. So I was dealing with stuff way less radioactive than a banana, right? Now, does it make sense? Now, do you understand how this fits? So yeah, when you take a plane ride, you get exposed to a lot of radiation. Radiation is normal. It's what powers this universe. You just don't. The big threat is you don't want to get a radioactive particle on like a piece of dust or something in you. That's where the damage comes. But our bodies are designed to deal with X amount of radiation, and you can measure it. And once again, this is just a complete article on how public perception doesn't match science.
Yeah, and not one single death has ever happened in America or even around the world directly from nuclear. It's a another big misconception led by the anti-energy people at this point. It's surprising to me. I didn't put it in here, but when I tweeted the article, I said, we want all the power. No, not that kind. So, all right, moving on. Oil patch M&A off to hottest start in years, fueled by low prices. And I asked you this at the beginning of the year if you thought it was going to be a huge year for M&A, and you thought it might have passed. Does this change your perception at all?
No, so the headline of this is a bit sensational. Hottest start in years. The M&A activity in oil and gas is about normal. We have, no matter what's going on, we have a lot of M&As. This is a global business. It's very large. It's capital intensive, which is a prime environment when people make mistakes for somebody to buy you. And this is talking about Suncor's energy spent 6.6 billion to buy Canadian oil sands, and then TransCanada spent 13.3 billion of Columbia Pipeline. That's normal. That's not, it's not way out of proportion to what happened the last couple of years. I thought 2014 was going to be a record year for M&A activity, and it just didn't happen. This perfect storm that I saw didn't materialize. So there's a lot of M&A activity going on. You can see a bit of a blip this year because what we just talked about, because of companies that made bad decisions and other companies that have capital. But that will clean itself up. The M&A activity will be about normal for the next 20 years or so. It's going to be interesting to see as things change, right? So, like we talked earlier, I think there's going to be this debt equity market that's going to be built in oil and gas, which will be the first time ever. Every downturn I've been through, the only source of capital was banks. This one's different because there's other sources of capital. So that means that companies that are asset heavy and cash poor are going to have multiple ways to try to raise cash. And like I said, I think you got this debt equity market step in, which will actually increase the M&A activity, because what they'll want to do is pick up companies and flip them. So good article talking about some real financial numbers. If you want to understand what's going on between the peer-to-peer M&A activities, read this.
Let me push back. Maybe is it that it's concentrated in Canada? Because this one line is what jumps out to me. 16 Canadian oil and gas proposed deals valued at just over 19 billion year to date dwarf the 2.4 billion in 27 deals during the same period last year.
That's a Canadian-centric metric. So when I'm talking about M&A activity, I'm talking about globally, right? And when you're looking at that big a piece of that big a bucket, $6 billion or $16 billion of M&A activity is not even a blip on the radar. If you want to break this down to Canada, I actually don't know. I'd have to do some research to see if this is a record year in the Canadian M&A activity.
Got you. So Canada, you can't go ahead and generalize across the entire population of the world based on what's happening in one country.
Yeah, because fundamentally, because the geology is different, right? So Canada's assets are either oil sands, which are very expensive, or frack fields. They don't have a lot of conventional reservoirs, which is going to drive a different business activity in this low crude price market than someplace like here in the U.S., where we have a mix of conventional reservoirs and fracking. We have a mix of the conventionals and unconventionals. So, this could easily be a record year in Canada. I don't have the data to be able to talk to that.
All right. This is an article that got a lot of clicks out of your Twitter feed, and I said we'd get to it later. So here it is. Why it won't be long before oil prices rise again.
Do I even need to talk about this?
Of course you do. Unpack it.
Yeah, so this is by Liam Halligan. He did a very good article talking about why the price of crude is going to rebound. And the only little thing in here that I have a little exception with is that he talks about how OPEC's cartel mounted a bit of an attack on fracking, and that's just not true. What people don't realize is that Saudi Arabia specifically has enemies, and Saudi Arabia has a military, but it doesn't have a huge military. And Saudi Arabia has concerns about its own people radicalizing. So Saudi Arabia uses oil price as a weapon, literally as much as a tank or aircraft carrier. And so Saudi Arabia, specifically in OPEC, stuck a knife in Russia's back, which is one of their enemies. Same way with Iran. It's one of their enemies. And so that's the fundamental politics on why they kept production up. They didn't do anything. Everybody thinks they did something. They just didn't lower production to get the price low. So he talks about that a little bit in here. I totally disagree with that, but everything else in here, he's spot on. I mean, somebody did some good research on the metrics, on the data. And he even talks about, and we've talked about this on previous shows, about how Saudi is suffering. They ran a 20% deficit in their budget, which they've never done, which means they had to tap into their savings account to run their social program. So the price of crude's coming back up. We talked about this just a minute ago. I think it's going to be $60 a barrel by August. He's thinking it's going to be a little bit longer than that. So let's see.
The geopolitics and it's the fact that so many OPEC countries are on the brink of war or in war, and how that's going to play into this. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. So Libya has almost no production. They used to be a big producer because of the wars that destroyed the infrastructure. Both Russia and the U.S. are bombing refineries now and pipelines. So their production's not going to be able to hit the market. They have the potential to hit the market. They're not going to be able to hit the market. There's a bunch of hostilities going on right now between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And even though Saudi Arabia has a small military, it probably has the most modern military in the world because they have a bunch of money. So their small military could, I think, easily take out, or not easily, but I think could end up dominating Iran because Iran's military, even though it's larger, is a lot of old stuff. If that happens, if hostilities spark off there, my $60 a barrel goes out the window, and we're back at $100 a barrel literally overnight. The other thing they talk about here is China, and he did a real good job because everybody thinks China is growth is stopped. It's not stopped. Just instead of it being 10% a year, it's 5 or 6% a year. It's still growing, which means their demand is still growing. You see a lot of stuff out there about how China's demand is falling. That's not true. It's when we do these forecasts, and we do this with our clients, right? We are one of the market research leaders in the oil and gas industry, and we don't see us getting down to $20 a barrel. It's just not happening. We see us getting back to 50 or 60. And this article does a good job explaining why that they also think we're going to get back there.
All right, let's revel once again in Mark LaCour's calling it, nailed it. Sector spotlight, energy refiners shine as crude oil sinks.
Yeah, well, we've talked about this before. I mean,
I know, but this was the first article that I saw that put raw numbers to what we've been talking about.
Yeah, the good thing about this is they go really, really big picture. So if you're not quite sure what upstream, midstream, and downstream is, they start there so you can understand the different segments of this industry. And they even talk about the definition of super majors. In fact, when you read this, it kind of makes them think that they watched my video I did all those years ago explaining this exact stuff. But what they're saying is that the downstream is just blowing and going. They're making money everywhere. I don't know if I've mentioned this before on the show, but ExxonMobil's International Petrochemical Division released fourth Q earnings in February. And their fourth quarter earnings grew 100% year over year.
That was the same as Q3 because we did a Q3 roundup.
Yeah, Q3, I think it was 67%, but Q4 was 100%. Think of that. Somebody as large as ExxonMobil was able to grow one of their business units over 100% in 1 year in profitability. That's insane growth. So this is a good article talking about that. And the other thing I like about this article, they talk about crack spread, which sounds kind of like porn, but it's not.
I was thinking it sounded like crack, but okay.
Yeah, so crack spreads are a simple thing to understand. It's basically the difference in price between the end product, think gasoline, diesel, or jet fuel, and crude oil prices. A lot of people think that gasoline prices are in direct proportion to crude oil prices here in the U.S., and it's not true. There's a difference for a bunch of different things. Like recently, you've seen the price of gasoline go up, and a lot of people don't understand, go, oh, great, price of gas goes up, the price of crude's going up. No, the price of crude actually went down. The price of gasoline went up. The reason it went up is that our refineries are having to switch to their summer blend by law, which costs more money. So there's a good example of a crack spread. But anyway, this is if you don't understand midstream, upstream, downstream, super major, read this. They did a really good job explaining that, and it's short. It's a short read. It'll take you 5 minutes to read this.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned about the switch to the summer blend, because I did tweet an article about that, and I actually knew what it meant because of you.
Yeah. It's this industry is way more complex than people from the outside think it is.
Yeah, and I've got to throw this stat in here. In 2015, the oil and gas refining and marketing subsector in the S&P 500 energy sector produced a whopping gain of 24.6 over the year. That compares to a 23.6 plunge in the broader energy sector. So good time to be investing downstream.
Good time to be working downstream. Investing. They're growing like crazy. And one of the drivers of that people don't understand, it's not that the end products, the plastics and the fertilizer stuff are used in the US. It's the developing world. It's the countries that are pulling their people out of poverty need these fertilizers to feed their people, need these plastics to produce goods to their people. So we're supplying that. So, this is actually driving global prosperity, which is cool.
And we're going to round it out with one really cool story about a guy who zigged when everyone was zagging, how a risky move paid off for this NYC investor and oil boss.
Yeah, this is a great article. Once again, you're right, James, talking about how when everybody else zigged, he zagged. So when everybody's dumping money into the shell plays, uh, uh, Scott Cohen zagged. He went out and found conventional reservoirs. But what he did is he spent money on better 3D seismic geology, right? Which means that he could better estimate the returns on his investment in conventional reservoirs. And what a lot of people don't understand, a conventional reservoir can be unbelievably cheap to produce oil in. So one of the benefits in the Middle East is most of their reserves are conventional reservoirs. So somebody like Saudi Aramco basically pumps a gallon of seawater, which is free, in the ground, and a gallon of oil comes up. The cost of that is $20. Their break-even point is $20. So conventional reservoirs are very insulated against price swings because it's so cheap to get it out of the ground. So Cohen basically put together a private equity company. It's called Petro River Oil. They're investing in conventional reservoirs all over the world, and they're making money. And even this low crude price environment. So here's a good example of somebody that thought outside the box, that did the right thing, that has a long-term business plan, and even in this low crude price market, he's making money.
Yeah, and the interesting thing to me is that it mentions that it really started in 2008, and if you put yourself in the mindset of 2008, you remember how that was the shale fever was really spreading rapidly at that point.
Oh yeah, that was when it just started to get kicked off, and so I'm sure his friends thought he was nuts. Like, no, 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 you need to invest in all this shale technology and horizontal drilling and fracking. And he looked at this long term wise. And there's a lot of stories like this out there that people don't get to hear. I'm glad you put this in here because people need to understand that no matter what goes on, geopolitically, price wise, whatever, parts of this industry still make money always. It's the whole reason that of our success, right? No matter what's going on, we can find a part of this industry that is growing that needs our clients' products or services. So, good article showing how if you think outside the box and you understand business and you think long term, you can still be profitable in this industry no matter what the price of crude is.
Definitely. All right, and on to our onion of the week. It has to do with your plan that you put together once you're fired. And we have to make a joke about that because if you can't laugh at the situation, then what good is it? I thought there was a couple pretty funny points there, but this has really given me an opportunity for a commercial for Oil and Gas Careers Podcast. Tell the people about it, Mark.
Yeah, so if you got fired, we have a podcast just for you. It's the Oil and Gas Careers Podcast, where we basically, James and I, this is a passion project of ours, where we basically are out there trying to help you understand what's going on in the industry, what jobs are available, what you need to do to get those jobs. And we highlight real jobs in the oil and gas industry on every show. It's short format, 20, 25 minutes.
No, it's never 25 minutes, actually capped at 20.
So, 20. Okay, good. So if you're fired or got laid off or you want to get in the industry or you just want to understand what other opportunities, hit our other podcast. You'll really like it.
Definitely. All right. And we have a winner, Mr. John Adler, KYC officer at JP Morgan. Can you tell us what a KYC officer is?
I don't know, James. I don't even want to guess.
I am the dictionary man, so I looked it up. Yes, I know something that Mark LaCour doesn't. All right, so KYC stands for Know Your Client.
Cool.
Yeah, Know Your Client.
I like that.
Know Your Client forms protect both clients and investment advisors. Clients are protected by having their investment advisor know what investment best suit their personal situation. Investment advisors are protected by knowing what they can and cannot include in their client's portfolio.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's high quality customer service. I even love that title, Know Your Client. I might borrow that.
Yeah, borrow it. And you'd be borrowing it for a pretty good company. If anybody around the world isn't aware of JP Morgan, they've been around since 1871. So
congratulations, Jonathan. And let me actually speak directly to you, Jonathan. You're going to love this bag, and I'm so glad you won. But we keep talking on this show that we need somebody that understands investing as an expert. So whenever we talk about stuff and you hear James and I say, hey, we're not a professional advisor, so don't take our investment advice. I'd like to talk to you, Jonathan, or somebody in your company, because I would love to have somebody from your company, or you join the show where James and I can go, we're not professional financial advisors, but we know one that is, which is Jonathan. So reach out to me or James, or have somebody from JP Morgan reach out to us. I'd love to engage in that conversation.
Yeah, definitely, because we have one more sponsorship spot open, but we bring in on a new sponsor today in Intech. So talk to us about Intech, Mark.
So Intech is a great company. They've been around for a long time. They do a lot of process controls. If you're in this industry and you're running any type of plant, you need to look at Intech. They do great work, high quality people out there. Reach out to them, reach out to us, and look and see what they can do, because they can really drive some efficiencies out there in the plant environment.
Yeah, I just had an opportunity yesterday to sit down with Eric Fidler, the president of the company, and talking about all of the different things that they do around automation and driving efficiency. And it's something that everybody in the industry needs right now. And just for our listeners, they have put together a white paper, which is pretty fantastic. I have to say, I did have a hand in copy editing it, so there might be some confirmation bias going there on my part. But this white paper, Artificial Lift: How to Drive Costs Down and Get the Most Out of the Ground. It's a really, really fantastic white paper. So go over to intechww.com/podcast. So it's Intech, INTECH, www.com/podcast, and support our new sponsor, because we need to give some love to the people that give us the ability to provide this content to you for free.
Yeah, and not only that, but people out there that are in producing properties, you want to know how to decrease your costs for your lift cost. So here's a free resource that takes you a minute to go download it, go do it. And speaking of that, James, we need to back up. If people want to enter the whole Red Wing thing, what do they need to do?
Yeah, I was going to mention it's no purchase necessary. See official site rules for rules and details. It's redwingshoes.com/podcast. And why don't you go ahead and give a shout out to Red Wing real quick?
Yeah, we love those guys, right? High quality stuff. I got my Red Wing boots ready for the rig tour. They have this whole fire resistant clothing line, this whole protective clothing line. If you only know Red Wing for their boots, you need to look at what else they provide, because it's really good stuff.
All right, good stuff. Let's move on to events. We've got a couple coming up right here in H-Town next week. The Houston Energy Breakfast. And shout out to Alan Gilmer. He will be there from Drilling Info, along with RT Dukes from, I'm blanking on where RT Dukes, from Wood Mackenzie, and a couple other really great people that you want to see.
You know, one of the great people that are going to be there?
You?
Me. I'm actually hosting a panel discussion on how to be prepared for the crude rebound. So I'm going to be there. This is a great event. You need to go. And if you want to know how to prep your company and your business for the crude rebound, which is coming, come talk to me.
And one thing that they did that was very innovative, I got to give them credit for this, because a lot of people listen to this show that can't make it to Houston. They actually have a virtual ticket.
Yeah, I thought that was cool too.
Yeah, they put together a virtual ticket. So I'll link that in the show notes. We haven't mentioned yet on this episode. The show notes for this episode are triberocket.com/TW56. And so if you want to see any of the stories we talked about, or register for the virtual summit, if you will, go there. All right, ISA Pipeline subsection at the Shrimp Boil and Tabletop Show.
Go to this, folks, if you can. I'll be there. I'm actually bringing some people there. This is boots on the ground type of stuff, right? So if you've never seen armadillo racing, you'll be able to see armadillo racing. It's shrimp and beer and a bunch of oil and gas people in a big building with a dirt floor. I mean, this is just great. So go to this.
Go to it. Don't start any fights, though. Not that someone did that. All right, rig tour. Tell us about the rig tour, brother, because it's going down.
April 30th, Saturday, April 30th from 10 to 3. It is your one chance, and I still can't believe I pulled this off. I'll never be able to pull this off again. It is your one chance to go tour a real offshore rig. Now, you don't have to go offshore because it's in dry dock in Baytown, Texas. But if you want to go, just Google. I guess James will put a link, but you want to look at the API Young Professionals Rig Tour. You have to sign up to go, and you have to join the API, which costs all of $25. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance, and James and I will be there, along with about 300 of your peers so far. You got about 300 people sign up. So go do this. This is going to be absolutely some of the best education, hands-on stuff you'll ever be able to experience.
And I will put together a link for this, triberocket.com/rig tour, RIGTOUR. Just triberocket.com/rig tour. If you haven't signed up yet, you're slipping, son, and you need to step your game up.
You have to go to this.
You have to.
You literally have to go to this.
And there's multiple other events going on that we don't have time to talk about. So if you would like to see those, go to triberocket.com/events and sign up for Mark's monthly events email, because this is where we get all of this knowledge from. We are coming up on our time, so we got to power through these next 3 points. But we haven't mentioned the First Friday Q&A in the last couple episodes, and we need questions, Mark.
Yeah, come on, folks. You want to know something about the oil and gas industry? You want to stump me? Come on, give us questions. We've gotten some really great questions, and we need some more. So, just go to the link that James provides, or go to his website and click the button so you can just leave one verbally, and get us some good questions out there.
Yeah, so it's triberocket.com/QA where you can write in, or you can just go to the show notes of this actual episode, which is triberocket.com/TW56, and just leave your question in the comments. Last month, we had one come in that was just a little bit late, and Mark was really able to help this person. I think it was a young professional.
Yeah. So, reach out to us, give us your questions, and we'll read them on. If we pick your question, you'll get read on the air, and you get a shout out.
And you get a shout out, and we do have the button, if you're on a desktop, to leave us a voicemail, which we highly encourage. All right, LinkedIn group. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, folks, if you listen to the show, go join our LinkedIn group. It is the world's premier oil and gas podcast peer-to-peer group. So it's not just this podcast. It's not just Oil and Gas Careers podcast. James and I and some other people that you don't know about yet have some future podcasts coming out. So this is our LinkedIn group is a place for you to meet with your peers, to get help on stuff, to really get kind of behind the scenes and join our family of our podcast audience. So if you listen to podcasts, go join our LinkedIn group. You'll be glad you did.
Definitely. And we have to mention iTunes reviews, because we can't thank everyone enough for helping us out in this way. And I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, come on, folks. So the reviews drive us up in the search engines. We have some competition. Now, we don't think they're big competition, but unfortunately, we have some competition. So the way for us to pass up our competition is by you giving us a review. This allows us to rise higher in iTunes and Google's, which then means more people can find us. So do me a personal favor. Take the minute and a half and go give us an iTunes review. I'm personally asking you to do this, and I appreciate you doing it.
Definitely. And I have to give a shout out to our newest 2 reviewers. I didn't read it. CB Dude. So this podcast is a great way to stay tuned into oil and gas news. I also learn something new every week on the technical side. Highly recommend listening. 5 stars, 4 stars, solid, easy listening, general O&G info podcast. I'm an experienced oil and gas professional on the drilling operations side. I enjoy listening to the podcast for the general overview of the oil and gas industry and to get a wider perspective on the industry. I appreciate Mark's broad knowledge and experience as he provides clear descriptions. James has enthusiasm, helps the podcast get made, and brings up topics despite not being strong technically. It's true. It's true. It's true. Yeah. If I was as strong as you technically, how would I ask you the dumb questions I'm supposed to ask? The podcasts are
a dumb question.
The podcasts are easy listening while mostly done in casual conversation format. The podcast has helped me pick up some new info and learn about other aspects of the industry in which I have not worked. Keep it going, guys. Thank you. That is from Keystoner USL. So a couple of great reviews. If you want to leave us a review, it's at triberocket.com/TW reviews. Take you straight into the iTunes store where you can leave us that review. And if you've made it this far in the show, please share it with your friends. You can go to triberocket.com/share-LI to go to LinkedIn/share-FB, go to Facebook /share-TW for Twitter. With all of that said, I know you've got to go, Mark. So you ready to go?
Yeah, folks, do great work. Pay it forward, and we will see you next time.
Go find some grease, guys. Mark, I'm going to pause for a second because I have to grab the link. I didn't have it open here. Sorry.